growing up the way that I did, surrounded by antiques that, you know, my great-grandfather or my great-great-grandfather and my grandfather and my dad, family members made, and that I got to live with growing up. And the idea that like family gathered around this and we ate on it every single night, and that he made that, to me, they were like superheroes. They were like, oh my God, like you made this and
Right.
we get to, and we use it.
Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we spoke with a good friend of mine, Gabe Sutton, an incredible furniture maker, designer, craftsman here in Biddeford, Maine. Sutton is from a long line of craftsmen. His great-great-grandfather was a gunsmith and furniture maker. His grandfather was the assistant dean of the Industrial Technology Department at Kent State University, and his father was a cabinet maker and photographer as well. Sutton continues the practice and builds unique furniture that will last for generations and embodies how people live. Our interview today is sponsored by Maine Home Design. Don't miss Sutton's AIA design theory in the upcoming June issue of Maine Home Design. And give it up for the wonderful and powerful Gabe Sutton. Good to have you in here finally.
Thanks.
We've been meaning to sit down and talk for a while.
Yeah.
So good to have you. How you doing?
Good. Been busy.
Yeah?
Busy start to the new year.
2020, right?
2020, celebrating my 20th.
That's right. You've been
20th.
in business 20 years.
Yeah. Yep. Technically. Sorry.
So just to start at the beginning, like why woodworking? How did you get into that? So to give a little background, Gabe, by the way, from Ohio originally, moved out to Maine.
Yep.
And knowing really no one out here, no business connections or anything else, just thought, Maine, I'll go make pretty furniture there.
It seemed like a good place to come to.
Yeah, I agree. I did the same thing. And you moved out and rented an apartment from a friend of yours, Caleb Johnson.
Yep.
And we soon after that had dinner together, I think at Caleb's house.
Yeah, we met like the first week I was here.
Yeah. And that was how long ago?
2010.
2010. A little while ago.
Must have been March.
And since then, you basically went from absolutely zero work out here to
zero,
making a good living, having your own shop, buying and selling a couple houses so far.
Yep.
You're getting commissions that I would say not maximize, but utilize like all of your creative intent and ability and skill. And at one point in that last 10 years, you're like, I don't know, I might move back to Ohio. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. You won't be able to surf in Ohio.
No.
So Gabe has picked up
God.
surfing since he moved here as well.
Thank God I didn't move back. Ohio's a great place to be from.
That's a nice way.
Right? I mean, you know the Midwest.
Yeah, no, I lived in Ohio
Michigan,
for a while,
Ohio,
and it's a fine place, but there's no ocean, and that's really hard for me.
So. No, there's lakes.
Yeah, they're big lakes.
Big lakes.
And that's nice. So that's kind of your background for people who don't know anything about Gabe. Gabe's a very personable, nice guy to hang out and talk with, and is very passionate about what he does, and that's why I wanted to get you in here. So
I am.
Woodworking.
So woodworking.
What got you into it?
I think it was there all along. You know, my whole life, like growing up, surrounded by people that just had a reverence for craft and art and woodworking. My grandfather was a hobby woodworker. My dad was a cabinet maker.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. He's from Detroit. Grew up on the streets of Detroit, and a man who had a cabinet shop, just like kind of in the ghetto, like pulled him off the streets and taught him how to be a cabinet maker when he was like 15. So it just kind of gave him an outlet, like a way off the streets.
Right.
Kept him out of trouble. But he had to more or less get out of it because of his allergies. He has like severe allergies. Yep. So but he did it up until...
doing that when you were a kid?
Yeah, like 3.
Okay, so you saw your dad to a degree working with wood.
I did, and more so just heard about it.
Oh,
just how he was very passionate about it as well. He loved doing it, and he respected the craft, and same with my mom and my grandma and grandpa. But my grandfather had a wood shop my whole life, and I was interested, but not. I was a very artsy kid, and I'd rather chase girls listen to music,
Yeah.
play sports. I was way into tennis. But so it was always there, but I didn't really get into it until I was 20. I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, and installed hardwood floors, and just learned how to use tools, and just being on a job site and being surrounded by people creating something, even though it wasn't furniture, it was a house. It just made me see it in a different light, and I just really enjoyed working with the material itself. So ultimately, combining that, like the technical aspects of that, combined with my creativity, growing up as an artist, drawing and painting and just doing whatever, it just made sense. It just kind of came together, and I thought, if I'm gonna work with wood, I'm gonna do it on my own, my own time and my own shop, and just create something with it.
Now, what is it specifically, and to the idea of like aesthetic art and everything else? If you are lucky enough to visit Gabe's home, you'll see you just, every part of like going into your house is like this layering of like aesthetic coordination and depth and interest, and it's like nowhere neat as a pin, and like an interior designer went to town,
right?
But it just has this depth of like, you look like it looks like you're looking like a modern house to a degree through a romantic painting of a space. It's weird. Cool. But it's like just every bit. I remember just walking into your living room when I came over recently and looking over at your dining room, and it's, a fairly small table, but just a selection of, I think, like candlestick holders and the light.
So that has to do, that's Megan. Megan
really?
Megan is my partner. Megan Rochello is my partner. She's amazing.
Good lady, I hear.
She's a great lady. She puts up with me.
Anyone who can put up with you or
she deals
me,
with my
mostly me,
ideas about things. She has a really good eye for design and curates really well. So together it creates that environment, and it creates that feeling. I think when you walk into our house, you can feel that, because we love our home, we love design, but we also, it's not, I don't want it to be so precious. We both agree that like it has to be used. Like I love seeing a lot of my clients are new families, and they have young kids, and sometimes, like, as soon as I'll deliver a table, one of their kids will just come up and like throw a truck on it, all over it, and they're like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "No, that's great. Like it's
going to be a very precious scar once like this
I
kid
didn't
goes
scratch
to college.
You scratched it. It's yours now."
Right.
But no, it's great. I love seeing that. I love seeing like family patina.
Yep.
To me, something doesn't get ruined or scratched. It develops a beautiful patina.
We recently acquired a table from some friends of ours that we refused to take the family patina off of.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's great. Lots of memories. I mean, that's the point. I grew up on a table like that my grandfather built. That was at their house. He built it from my grandmother's father owned a men's clothing store in Delaware, Ohio. He had to close it finally towards the end of the Depression, but he like the main counter was walnut, and I don't know who made that counter. It could have been made by his father. That was my great-great-grandfather, Finley Gabriel Keith. He was a gunsmith, like a really well-known gunsmith in Southern Ohio, and furnituremaker and an inventor. I have some really cool, I'll show them to you. You would really dig them. These patents, like he patented some type of mechanism for like to make a steam engine, like more efficient. And then, steam engines went
by the wayside.
And the oil industry took over. But so I have his patents. They're really cool. Like one's in German, I think one's in French, and one's American.
So what is the material fascination with wood, rather than why not a metalsmith making metal things, or being a painter, or like talk to me about wood?
I think everybody has an appreciation for the material they work with. I think steel guys who do work with steel will speak about it in a similar way. But for me, wood is just, it's something, it gives us life. Trees grow. And the only reason we exist is because we have trees. So and I'm able to work with this
Part of
material
that
after
cycle.
that tree is dead, which is, I don't know. It's just to me, it's important. It's an important thing. And that, aside from that, just the material itself, it has warmth, it has depth, it has color and tone and texture. And there's so many different types of wood species that it's just this palette. It's like an artist palette, and it's fun to create with that.
What has got you inspired in design with wood recently? Like what is catching your eye and confusing you and inspiring you?
Yeah. So right now, at the moment, my focus is on this my 20th anniversary. I'm doing a coffee table every month.
Oh, cool.
So my
Are
first,
you going to do that the whole year?
yeah.
Nice.
So like a calendar of coffee tables, and each one I'm going back through like my archives of like my mental archives of design inspiration. Because like when I started out, I was really inspired by like traditional Japanese work and traditional arts and crafts work. And so like over the years, it just, I continued to evolve and new things would inspire me. But I think all along, like Danish modern and mid-century modern was just always there. Because I started like I'll look at photos of old pieces, or like my mom actually has a ton of pieces in her house. My dad has some old pieces. And like all along the line, like if I made an arts and crafts table, like the mid-century lines were always there. Like
Right.
they were always like a little finer. So I think this year I'm just going to go back through the archives and do like a different table every month that is inspired by
Right.
those design styles. So like right now I'm intrigued by that, which is confusing.
Well, how so?
All in and of itself. Well, so I have 12 months. I have to come up with like 12 different tables, but I don't know. I've been so focused on just like mid-century. I love Danish modern, mid-century modern design. So it'll be interesting, like going back through.
What do you think of I experienced an interesting thing in seeing a person that was a craftsman that was building other people's designs in furniture.
Yeah.
And they were extremely minimalist designs.
Yeah.
But the stuff that he would do was less about the joinery and everything else.
Yeah.
In his personal time, it was far more ornate with like carvings and stuff in the furniture.
Right.
And it's interesting to me, the transition from, like thrones and stuff that you'd see, like they don't, like, as long as it stays together, that's fine.
Right.
It's about the gold and the ornate and
Right.
that bit of it. And as society seems to progress and become
Right.
more modern, those things seem to typically get stripped down, and it
Right.
becomes more about the material and the connections.
Yep.
And like, why that transition, you think, even in society and in design?
Well, I think design says a lot about society in that moment and culture in that moment. I mean, if you look back at the Victorian era, everything that whole, the way people were, the attitudes and the politics kind of represented the design culture. Everything was super ornate and gaudy and, pattern on top of pattern on top of pattern. And, I think that just through the age, then you get into like arts and crafts furniture, where it's just, that was the whole point of arts and crafts furniture, was it to be stripped down and like focus on the material and on the joinery. And I think the whole, that says a lot about society in that moment and culture in that moment.
Right.
And I think now, unfortunately, we're even getting away from that, where people are more focused on design and less on construction methods and joinery. And then I think you have to have both, like both have to harmonize. You can't have one or the other. If you have a piece of furniture that is designed solely around wanting to show off joinery, then it's going to fall by the wayside as far as design goes. Aesthetically, it's not going to be pleasing. If you have a piece that focuses only on design and less on construction method and less on joinery, then you're going to have something that is probably going to fall apart.
Right. Physically will fall
right.
apart.
Which is, I think, what's happening now with like a lot of box store furniture.
Right.
I don't know. I like the combination of both. I don't get so wrapped up in joinery anymore. I think when I was starting out building furniture, that's what drew me to it initially. It was just like how to make these two pieces of wood fit together, efficiently and beautifully, and and I just love the technicality of like hand cutting a dovetail joint and hand planing a surface. And I do that now, but I'm always finding a balance. I also have to make a living doing it. So
Sure.
I think anymore it's just finding that balance. But if I'm doing like a chest of drawers, I still hand cut my dovetails.
Yeah.
I think I do it because I have a method of doing it that is pretty efficient, and I don't strive for quote unquote perfection in doing it. And I don't strive for a type of imperfection. I just let the imperfections be what they are in process. Does that make sense?
You probably had a lot more peace than me.
Well, I don't know how many pieces of furniture I've built. Quite a few. And I think that every one has a different process. They can have the same general process, but not all walnut's the same. Not all wood works the same. So
Mm-hmm.
I think process is more important than.
Do you learn a lot about life from your struggling with wood and design and everything else?
Oh yeah. Whether it's conscious, I'm sure subconsciously I do. I think ultimately it taught me to slow down. Like when I got into building furniture, it was I started really getting into it in like the late 90s, and 2000 was like technically my first year in business. But leading up to it, I landscaped, I worked construction, installing hardwood floors.
Mm-hmm.
That whole industry was about rush, get it done, get it out the door.
It's about making money.
Making money and
very much balancing that line between making money and doing a good job.
That's right.
Knowing that doing a good job will continue to make you money.
That's right. So I think the biggest thing furniture taught me was to slow down and focus. And I had a really hard time doing that up until then. So, and then you have to find the balance in there, because, if you go too slow, then you don't make money.
Right.
And this is the thing about designing and building custom furniture. Like, you don't have to do it to make money. Sometimes I think it would be great if it was just my hobby.
Right.
And I had another means of making money. But at the same time, realistically, could I do that? No.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things in there to unpack. Back to where we were talking about. Let me see if I can draw the connection here. But that struggling between going the design route, being the extreme of what that piece is going to be. It's all about design.
Right.
Who cares about the connections?
Right.
And then the other extreme going to, it's going to be all about the connections, and who cares about, what it looks like as much. Right.
Right.
And it's interesting to me, like the fluctuations in our society as far as going, swinging left, swinging right. It's amazing how much they correlate to that kind of thinking about, the ideas, how things go together. What's the reality, the very basic truth we can find here.
Right.
And that's going to guide everything. That kind of like the joinery is going to guide everything. And
right.
and it kind of loses its value if you insist on, just data, facts, and everything else.
Right.
It becomes this different thing. But then if you like disregard data, facts, and all that, and go this other route of it's just going to be what I feel it needs to be,
right.
and you ignore the data and the truth and the unavoidable things, it becomes that other thing that's too far up, like the extremes. Right. And it's always been amazing to me how this living material wood and how the joinery works, and how design with that living, breathing, material reflects life more than anything else that I've encountered. And I don't even know wood and furniture building enough to really speak on that, but it's very interesting how like focusing on one or those other things perverts the end result.
Right.
And that best balance is that one in between the two,
Yep. Yeah, I think that, I mean, that can speak a lot about life. Like, right, looking at a piece of furniture that, if you can see its construction techniques, you can see its joinery, then that's a strong piece of furniture, right? And I think that having a strong foundation is key to any type of relationship, whether it's a friendship, relationship with a family member, relationship with a significant other, brother, sister, whatever. Right. That's what, like, you relating to that that's a human response to that. Right.
Right.
So, right. That is important. I mean, we surround ourselves with all kinds of stuff, right? And furniture is just one of those things that we have in our home.
I'm always intrigued by the people that surround themselves with things that are both very meaningful and beautiful.
Yeah.
Compared to like, I got this from a box store.
So that's the point, and I think that's what, I mean, when I first started building furniture, remember the 90s? Like, nobody really
Barely.
Focused on, barely.
It's a long time ago.
A long time ago. It seemed like in the 90s, early 2000s, nobody cared about local anything, local foods, local craft, local art.
Yeah, it's definitely a more recent in the past decade.
In
movement.
the past decade, it has really taken off. I saw it coming. I was one, in northeastern Ohio, not a lot of people are designing and building custom furniture. There are now.
Really?
But in the early 2000s, I would call shops, just looking for a job, if I could come in and just work part-time and like learn
Right.
How to do stuff. And people, they were like, what do you want to do this for? There's no money in it. We're closing our doors, like we just laid
Right.
off everybody. So it was just, everything was going commercial. It was all about like commercial cabinet shops and box store furniture. It's when like Crate and Barrel and a lot of other stores just really started ramping up. So I think there's always a resurgence. It's everything's a cycle.
Yeah,
and
it's that swing back and forth between the
right. So, and I think we're seeing that now where it's, I mean, you can, like right now, I'm hyper focused on everything local. Like I'm trying to source everything I can right here, right in my own hometown. Since I moved into my shop, I've worked primarily for friends.
Really?
Yeah, I think I've only had one client since I moved in last May that just like came through online that I didn't know. It's all been for friends. And that's super important because I go to their house and like have dinner with them and I get to just look at my piece and we can talk about it. And it's just, I don't know, it's a really fun relationship. I think more and more people are like, they're searching for that with everything, with clothes you buy, with
Right.
shoes you buy, with whatever you like, utensils you buy for your home, with everything you surround yourself with in life. If you have a personal connection to that, then it means something to you, and you're not going to get rid of it.
Yeah,
so that's like less stuff on the curb, less stuff in the landfill.
Right.
Right.
And those things are going to cost you more, but it's that shifting of focus from.
But does it cost more?
Well, in the immediate,
yeah,
it costs more cash.
Right.
But the thing you gain from that is everything that you choose, if you think it out and choose it based on a system of belief that you're embracing, that you
Right.
let go through most of your life, then you're continually reminding yourself with the utensils that you chose, why you chose them,
Right.
why you chose to spend more money on them, where they were from, what they're made of.
Right.
And I think it's a more European way of thinking
Yeah.
that is developing in the American society.
Yeah.
Somewhat, I would think.
It is. Yep. Especially like in small pockets.
Yeah.
Like if you go in the greater Midwest, I think it's going to be different. But like,
yeah, I'd imagine
you
just
have
the urban
pockets
centers
everywhere.
are going to be a little more, progressive like that.
Yep.
But at the same time, how does a person live in that manner that just simply doesn't have the means to live in that manner? At some point, they have to choose, like, all right, I'm going to break out of this mold of living in this way, and I'm going to, even on this small income, I'm going to choose to make my own things. And that's a
Right.
really hard thing to do,
It's
to
super
sell
hard.
art to people who can't afford
It's
it.
super
you know?
hard, and I've done it, and I think, I think all along since I started doing this, it's been something that was really important to me, was like, how can I build a piece of furniture, for the average blue collar family,
Right.
because I come from a family of working class, white collar, blue collar professors, teachers, but always, just humble incomes. And especially growing up in northeastern Ohio, it was just like, how can I build a piece of furniture for this family who technically can't afford a piece of handmade custom furniture?
Right.
And I've done it. I have some designs that are meant for that. And I think but it just depends on, custom furniture is a funny thing. When you strike out on your own and you put together your own shop, you just start coming up with your own pricing. How do you do that?
Right.
What's this based on? Is it based on market value? What is market value?
Right. Right.
There is no,
You have to take what
spitballing.
you're creating and
Right.
just, fairly randomly assign some value to it. I mean, you
Totally.
could do a very base level analysis and say like,
Right.
all right, I've got overhead, blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
A piece takes me this
That's
long.
right.
I got to charge that much.
You can't
But
break the bank. That puts you out of business. But I definitely think it's important to reel in that concept of price point to appeal to a larger demographic of people.
Right. Right.
I'm all about that.
So how do you find it making a living as a creative? Because you have no other income than woodworking.
Yep.
And as I think we've both talked about this, we're both very lucky to be able to
Super
make
lucky.
a living doing what we find inspiring and creative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've seen this in the professional surfing world.
Yeah.
You'll see people burn out and
Oh,
you
yeah.
think like, what on earth? You surf. How
Right.
could you burn out on
Right.
being paid to surf?
Right.
The thing you don't get is you've taken something that was enjoyable for them
Yeah.
and you've turned it into their means of income and their worth.
Right.
And then you're grading them on that. And
That's
if they
right.
fall below the standard where the public thinks they should be, they lose the ability to make a living for themselves.
Right.
So what it becomes is not a thing of enjoyment, but a thing of sustaining themselves, and that
Right.
becomes a work,
Yep.
And the same thing can happen with furniture making and with photography, I'd imagine.
Totally.
That what you do that was creative becomes done in a far more panicked and financially oriented way. And that's an odd thing for me to deal with in my head. Like not until this last Christmas have I really put any emotional energy into creating photography just as a fine art type of thing. Like I've just never done that. It's always been that I've saved my energy for when I'm actually working, to try and trick myself into thinking that this is solely for creative things and it's
Right.
you're not making money. Just invest all of your emotion and creativity here.
Right.
Don't worry about the money.
Right.
But yeah, I'm always curious how other creatives deal with that and the stresses that they feel and how it erodes what they maybe once enjoyed and now feel like is more of a stress. Right. Or have you been able to protect that in some way?
Yeah, I think I've protected it really well. I mean, I've seen some pretty rugged times and I've seen some good times. I still see slow times and then I see really busy times. So I think the way to protect that is to stay true to yourself. I don't think there's a problem in, it's when it's so polarized now, right? It's when it's either black or white. That's when people get burnt out. You have to learn to live in that gray zone and not be so rigid in like, this is what I do now. This is what I do now. I think taking those jobs that you don't want to do is really important. The ones that can make you money, right? Mm-hmm. That's how you can do your art. That's how you can.
Right, like if you can categorize it in your mind, like, all right, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to be charging for it, but and it's going to allow me to continue things and just prioritize. And
Yep. I spent my first 10 years doing that, doing jobs that I really didn't want to do, but it kept me in my shop, not having to be an employee in another shop, and it allowed me to make an income that I could focus on designing my own furniture and doing what I was passionate about,
Right.
like my art.
So you
And
use those paying jobs to develop the kind of things that you wanted
100%.
to do.
Yep, 100%. And even when I moved to Maine, I think what really helped me moving to Maine, meeting Caleb, meeting you, meeting Derek Preble, really got me on my feet. Just like put me into a community of people that care.
Right.
And that could help me. I mean, you photographing my work for me and us doing that barter, it really helped. It got me some great images to then put out there.
I still really like that video that we did together.
Video was great. Yeah,
I really liked just
beautiful.
the light and the subject matter and everything
Yeah.
else was really nice. There's a lot of work that I've done in the past that I go back and look at and I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
Nah. But that one was just completely I really admired what you do.
Yeah.
And enjoyed just spending that time talking with you, getting the audio recording about what you do, and then to just go and get B-roll and put it to that. It was nice.
It was cool. That was a great video. I think that since I've been in Maine, I think the internet too has something like, in the early day, like early 2000s, late 90s, the internet, I think, was a place that people were still skeptical.
Like they didn't necessarily want to date through the internet or buy furniture through the internet.
It was like, you're going to get scammed.
Right.
If you're on the internet, somehow you're going to get scammed. By 2000, 2010, when I moved here, people started seeing it a little differently, and as a place where they could actually, buy handmade stuff, not just furniture, but everything and anything, right? Everything just became more accessible and more available. So that helped too. So I really built a client base, from here to California. I've shipped pieces. I have some great clients in California. I have some great clients in New York. So that helped. Being able to make a living at designing and building my own work, the internet really helped me do so.
Right.
And in really focusing on getting my work out there via internet over the past decade, kind of brought me full circle to this year, building this new shop. It's making me really focus on my local community and Maine in general. I want to build a client base in Maine. I want to be, ideally I want to be that like towny woodworker,
right?
Like that, the furniture shop for Biddeford and build stuff for friends. It's not realistic to do that like sustainably, right? I only have so many friends, and they can only afford so many pieces of furniture.
Right.
But
you just go destroy your friend's furniture.
But the focus is there, and which is I think the internet's becoming a place that people are so focused on looking for a particular product. And there's a lot of disconnect when people are shopping. They see a design they like, and there's no connection to the maker, and they just buy it. And that's cool because it keeps the maker alive and working.
Right.
But just where I'm at now is I want a deeper connection. I want to deliver my stuff
right
to my client's house and sit down and have dinner with them and hang out.
So what do you think it is that's made you successful at what you do compared to other people who may have the same skill but have not been successful?
I think over the years I've done a pretty decent job of putting myself out there, doing little things like this, right? Like the videos that you've done for me, and having my work just out there online. And I think doing pieces that Danish modern, mid-century modern furniture in the early 2000s, you couldn't give it away.
Really?
No. I would do pieces like I would do a coffee table, like a very Danish coffee table in walnut, and literally couldn't give it away.
Really?
Nobody wanted it. No.
So I was in architecture school at the time. I would have taken it.
I'm sure you would have. So that like our generation and the millennial generation, they're the ones that like, they started seeing these old pieces in their parents' houses.
Right.
And also, what really kicked it off was that show Mad Men.
Oh yeah, right.
That
right.
show, like, ever since that show, I think, some designers in New York, they say something's hot, it's hot.
Right.
All of a sudden, like a George Nakashima coffee table gets put on the cover of like House Beautiful magazine, and that's hot.
Right.
And that's his stuff is still blowing up through auction houses. So
I just remember seeing like, Mies van der Rohe type buildings and the furniture that was in them, and it's just like
blown away.
Beautiful.
Totally. And that whole like design style and aesthetic of like minimalist design and mid-century design, it just started coming back, and I was already doing it. I mean, I had an aunt. She was like best friends with my grandparents, but she was an aunt to me. And she had a house in Lansing, Michigan, and her whole house was like Herman Miller and Knoll. And so I grew up exposed to that. And I loved it. Even as a little kid, I was just like blown away by just how clean and simple her house was, and the furniture and art. And, so to me, it triggers, right? Like good design triggers an emotional response, and to me, that just, it harmonizes with me. So I've just always wanted to design and build mid-century modern furniture, but couldn't make a living doing it.
Right.
So I think by the time it became in vogue again, I had the pieces out there that were familiar and people liked, and so there's some. I wouldn't call me successful.
I would.
But I'm able to do it and make a living doing it. A humble living, very humble living.
Did you have to sit in traffic this morning and go do some job that sucks your soul apart?
See, that's success, right? I guess you're right.
Step number one to success.
Totally. Yeah, it's true.
Making money above what you need is just icing on the cake at that point.
That's true. Yeah. Totally.
If you can sustain
I wouldn't measure
something you
success
love
by
and enjoy.
I don't measure success by financial gain. It's icing on the cake. Past a certain
See,
point,
now
for
it's
sure.
interesting to me because it was very late in my life that I realized not everyone's the same. Seems very obvious statement. Right. But I'm very thick, I guess, in that manner. But I just kind of assumed everyone would be miserable if they had to have a job doing anything that was not what they determined they were going to do that day. And
so how did you develop the idea of that? Why do you think that way?
Anytime I ever had to do a job where I was stuck in one area or doing something repetitive or having to disseminate into allow my thinking to spread into a group and be affected by that group, I just got real itchy. Okay. So I'm not a great personality for the all of society to congeal.
Status
like
quo,
if everyone was like me, we'd just go down in flames, right? But there's a few
or be better.
There's a few there's a call for there to be sprinkles of people like me. Sure. And that's fine and good. But it's not good for everyone to be like that. But my lack of ability for I don't think it's empathy, because I really feel empathy at times, but the lack of ability to understand that other people would feel security by having a consistent job, working for a company that has a vision that you can adopt, and that brings a lot of comfort and satisfaction to people to be part of a bigger organization like that. And yet I was never someone who wanted to be part of something like that. I didn't want to lead something like that. I didn't want to follow something like that. And I just wanted to be on my own, doing my own thing, right? And to learn that about myself, I really enjoyed design school, but just even getting into working in a small office was really difficult for me. And it wasn't until I got to the point of realizing all the bureaucratic laws and everything else associated with the practice of architecture was just stifling to my soul, basically. And to get into something like photography where it was very pure creativity, only really constrained by the technical tools that you were using.
Yeah.
But even then you could bend those and work with them. And
I'm
with
surprised
digital,
you never
could
got
have,
into
like,
woodworking.
turnaround.
I'm surprised you never got
Well,
into
see, that's the other
furniture
thing.
design.
Like, no one's really going to get hurt by bad photography or bad woodworking.
Right.
More so with woodworking, maybe like a bed falls and, you know, kills,
Right.
I don't know. But it's not.
Dressers
Yeah,
fall over.
dressers falling over. It's not, you know, it's always your livelihood
Right.
and your reputation on the line,
Right.
more than having to appease overlords that control your life.
Right.
The only control you have on your life is if you did your job well and you treated the people right that chose to use you.
Right.
Then you're gonna do well. And that to me was just always inspiring. And I found that I succeeded in situations like that. And it was inevitable that I had to figure out how to be self-employed primarily.
Right.
And I'm very lucky to have found that I could do that through a creative means.
Yeah.
And like I had thought that, like, after architecture I was going to go into buying, flipping houses, and I did that for a while, and there was creativity involved in, like, what are we going to do to this house financially? How can we be creative of buying this and presenting it and, and everything else? So there was that, but it was not to the pure degree that, like, furniture making or photography was. So that's how I ended up kind of eventually, you know, figuring out that I'm a bad employee, a bad business partner, not a good leader of people, and doesn't work well with others.
So when did you figure this out? Like, what was the...
It's just been a slow burn over time, but, you know, to really figure out the basic thing that not everyone's the same is, you know, came when I basically wore my wife into the ground through constant criticism of, why aren't you doing things like me, how I see they should be done?
Yeah.
You know, after 10 years of marriage, she was just done with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to face the music as far as, like, all right, okay, I am not right all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's not the same. There's multiple ways of doing things. There's not just one way of doing things.
Right.
And it's interesting to me because I'm always criticizing the way other things are done as if I know the one true way of doing things.
Right.
And I can find the way that works best for me, but I have to know that that's best for me.
It's because you're a man.
Yeah, that might be part of it.
We think we're right.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
We're good at getting things done, but oftentimes it's the wrong thing.
It's the wrong thing. So I think when you admit that to yourself, that sparks new growth. That's like,
well, yeah, that's the next question I had for you is, like, you've obviously made a lot of failures as a business person, as anyone would.
Totally.
You know, not saying obviously you failed.
Obviously you have failed.
No, but I mean, I've failed tons.
Yeah,
but I don't know that there's anything that I would say I need to go back and change, because I wouldn't know that now had I not done that failure.
Right.
But what failures have you learned from as a woodworker coming to where you're at?
Oh God. I think designing and building furniture, period, is a you know, you have to fail to succeed. You have to fail at everything. You have to fail at designing a piece, building a piece, construction methods. You know, you have to have things fall apart to understand how it's going to go together and stay together.
I wonder if creativity being such a emotional intelligence that then is communicated in some creation, that there's so little ability to objectively get to where that creative solution comes out, that failure is just required as a means of embracing the emotion of what went right, what didn't go right, as a means of coming to that better solution, you know?
Well, I think failure too is, I mean, at a given, you know, me thinking I failed at something may not mean somebody else thinks I failed at something.
Right.
You know, sometimes I'll design something and build it.
Like,
and
it's great.
The end result, they're like, that's great. Right. And I'm like, I failed at that, but next time maybe it'll be better.
Right.
So but I think that, like, I don't think failure is a negative word, and I think most people do think it is a negative word.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, and I think we're kind of raised this way and like coached to think this way growing up, that if you fail at something, then you shouldn't be doing it, and you fail,
Right.
go do something else. You can't do that. Like, you suck, and that's the wrong attitude, and that's unfortunately why things are so shitty.
That's from doing the project with the prison inmates years ago. That's what the thing I came away with is that these people that are in prison, if they can process what they've done and learn from it and share from that place of healing and viewpoint of that correction, if you will, that they're so extremely valuable. What they have to say is extremely valuable, but
totally.
we're just locking them up, putting them away.
Right.
And I mean, there's people in the project that we did that we do not need to hear from. They have not learned from what they've done.
Sure.
And they do not have anything to give other than they want to take more.
Sure.
There was a few people that you could get that from. Yeah. But there were also a few in there that had processed their life and had realized some stuff that they had so much to give and share. And that to me was a eye opener for me as well, that, these things that you fail at, when my wife had to tell me the way this is going is not good. It's failing. I saw that as a moment of like, you got some options here. You can deny that you've been failing, but everyone around you is telling you you're not doing good in these areas and you need to change that. And there's a degree of just like, okay, absorb that. That really feels shitty when you absorb those things and allow yourself to emotionally, like, all right, I did that wrong. And especially it's like at a relational level, that's hard.
It's so healthy to do that.
So incredibly healthy. Like, I have the space now, like when I mess up with my kids, and Simon told me this last night, which was kind of brought a tear to my eye. I found when I mess up, lose my patience, whatever, that as soon as I can emotionally get to the place to be calm and go back and say, look, I'm so sorry. That I shouldn't have talked to you like that. You didn't deserve that. What you did was this, that, or the other, but it didn't need to have that reaction from me. I shouldn't have spoken to you in that way. I'm very sorry. And he said last night, like, he was over at a friend's house, and this friend, I think it was only like 5 years old, asked Simon and Grayson to go into their garage and get something like that the kid couldn't reach, or and so Simon's there trying to get something. The father comes out of the house and just starts yelling. He's like, get out of my garage. And Grayson took off running, and Simon just kind of slowly, like, but the kid was left there. He said the kid just sat down and started crying, and that kind of sucks. Your dad comes out and yells at people, and, and he's talking to me about it. And immediately I'm like, well, you know what the positive here is, guys, right? I'm not the worst dad out there. And they kind of laughed, and
at least
they're
I'm
like,
not that guy.
But they kind of laughed. They knew I was, kind of kidding. And Simon actually said, like, well, Dad, when, you do get grumpy sometimes, but when you apologize, that's really nice. And that's as much as he could verbalize on that. But I knew what it was doing. It's empowering him to say, for one, to learn to forgive, to accept that people mess up, and that you work constantly towards better behavior, better art, better whatever, but to allow those failures is just so important.
It's freeing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it's because everybody fails all the time. Constantly. We're failing at something.
That was the hard thing about attending churches for me, is that everyone seemed like they were putting on a face like they weren't failing. It's like,
no,
failing.
You fail all week.
So, I mean, I keep saying,
Today,
like, people should be required to be able to only go to church in their underwear.
Yes.
Because if you talk to anyone who's been to a nudist colony, no one looks good naked.
No.
And no one's going to look good in their underwear. It's not that kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, well, stay away from, the youth division. Anyone can look good when they're young. But, like, adults should be required to go to church in their underwear.
Super humbling.
Yeah, I think that's...
Totally.
Class is done away with. And
it's hilarious. Nudist church.
Not nudist, just
underwear. Yeah. Just underwear.
I think it could catch on.
Totally.
The Unitarians would pick it up first.
Super quick. No, I think that's true though. I think the only reason, I was able to keep going through really difficult times early on is because I was always able to admit when I failed to myself. And that's what made me succeed next time.
Right.
And so many people, as soon as they fail, they back away.
Right.
And they quit.
Yeah. To be able to teach a kid or anyone that failure is extremely valuable.
Dude, who was it? Like Thomas Edison said, he failed 400 times before he succeeded.
400 times at making a light bulb or whatever it was.
Right. So it's like, that's where success comes from.
Right.
You don't just go, I want to do that and I'm going to be amazing at it.
Yeah. The
Some
road
people
to
do.
success
Some people
is paved
do.
with failures, I think is the quote.
Yeah. But right.
I wonder if, I keep thinking of all these things in terms of how I can teach these kind of morals and principles to my kids, in that, like, look, failure is inevitable and it can be the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Or it can be
I
the
would
best
imagine too,
thing
you
ever.
could like do the extreme too and be like, you failed. You keep failing.
I'm already good at being critical. I don't need to work at any of that.
Trust me, son, you'll succeed someday, from your father telling you.
I'm going to name you Sue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that song. It's so good. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to recognize that. And, it has helped me, that constant idea of that in my own head of never really being satisfied with something I build.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I'll get something done now that I'm pleased with, I'm happy with. But even when I am happy with it, I'm like, next time,
right,
I'm going to do it this way.
Okay, so I'm finding this as a consistent thing in other at least self-employed creative people, that I've found that specific trait was very difficult for Amber, my wife, because I would take that and focus that on my work and say, this photograph, I don't like that.
Right.
And I'd internalize that and be like, failure, don't like it, whatever.
Right.
I'd internalize it and it would guide me in the future.
Yeah.
And when I'd come up to a similar, I'd be like, remember that? I want to avoid that. So let's try something new here. And that would help me, but that constantly thinking, how could I make this better? How is this wrong? That kind of thing that helped me succeed as a photographer and as a business person.
Right.
When I didn't turn it off to my relationships and people that I was close to, becomes a very difficult thing for someone to deal with that doesn't approach doesn't approach life in that manner.
Right.
Because I remember, I think I've used this example once before, but we were on a wedding anniversary weekend. We were up in Camden, I think, at the Norumbega, and we're sitting there. We got like the library room or something, really cool room, and I'm thinking, all right, I'll make a nice conversation. It was just in the afternoon. We were like reading books. I'm like, how could this be any better? And immediately Amber was like, see, that's not how you approach this. And I'm like, but I was just trying to, it's like, just enjoy it. Yeah. Don't try and, critique this or anything else. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I've had to really like beat myself up in that area to get myself to turn that part of my brain off.
Yeah. It's
to
tough.
allow myself to be around people and not have them be constantly worn down by that aspect of my personality.
I'm very similar.
Really?
Megan is constantly, she calls me out on it a lot. Yeah. Where maybe I'll get something done, or I don't know what it was recently, but similar in that I'm not always fully satisfied with whatever.
Right.
Right. And she's like, just be satisfied with it. Like, we just got that done. Like maybe like a remodel, something we do to our house, I'm like, oh, next time we should do this.
Right.
She's like, no, this is sweet. Like, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I think that, it's important that people like us, very creative people like us, have to surround ourselves with people that keep us down to earth, and on that plane of
kind of call out
what is
a lot of things and give some direction.
But at the same time too, like Megan, her eye, she has such a great eye for design, and her eye is it's different than mine. Like we we share the same aesthetic on design, but I'll get a piece done and she'll go, that doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to my brain. I'll maybe shift a leg a different way or like turn a tabletop a different way, and she'll go, do it that way, which is really interesting to me. And I'm like, I may not do it that way because I just don't want to, but it's really interesting how people can have a difference of opinions, like when it comes to a particular design, like why it makes sense to you and why it doesn't make sense to me. Right.
Yeah, that's
very subtle differences. I'm always intrigued by that.
Continually interesting to me that like with architecture and art and everything else, there's no right or wrong. There's just a lot of strong opinions. And I just watched the Who the Bleep is Jackson Pollock.
Oh yeah.
And it was so interesting to me, the art critic in that film.
Yeah.
He just seemed like the most over the top, doing this for just a show.
So I don't know if I saw that. That's the documentary.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that. I saw another documentary about Jackson Pollock years ago.
Well, this is the one where this woman who's a trucker finds a Jackson Pollock at a yard sale. And the art community will not accept it.
Oh, crazy.
But everyone, they've like forensically verified it being real. A Jackson Pollock. Wow. Yeah, and she's been offered like $2 and $3 million for it, and she didn't take it. No, and it's supposedly worth 10 to 15, and she wants like that, and she's just like, she's real crusty,
holding out.
Yeah, awesome. It's funny, but there's this art critic in it.
I would have been like, sure, $3 million, okay, here, done.
She's done. You watch it. It's
I will. Yeah,
the art critic in it to me is the most interesting part of it, because he is so confident on what he's doing, and I feel like he's a sham, but there's part of me that thinks he might know something,
right?
And really be in on the art, the fine art, high art, whatever scene to me has become extremely interesting, because
really interesting.
Our society puts immense amounts of money into the creations of subjective people, like kind of like myself, that are just kind of like, I make this, it's beautiful. People pay millions of dollars for it.
Millions.
And that's so crazy to me, that there's some thread of truth in there that is sewing things together that tells us more about us in reality. That to see that art critic do what he did, and like these ways that he like looked at the painting, and it just seemed like a huge show, but you kind of see like there's something there.
Or he knows something.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting.
I love that. It is an interesting world. The high art world is something to behold for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they just did the banana for however many, $50,000 for a banana taped to a wall, and then I think someone came by and ate it, and they just put a new one on, and were like, that was art. Here's a new one. Or it was something like that. I'm getting it wrong.
That banana wasn't special.
Yeah,
it was just a banana. There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, the history of art, when I was in architecture school, they went through, like, there was at one point, there was a guy who would just get found objects, write his name on it, and it was art.
That's awesome.
And like people would pay bunches of money for it. When I went and shot for Colby and their big, very expensive modern art museum.
Yeah. I need to get
There's a piece of plywood on the wall.
Really?
Just a piece of plywood.
Interesting.
Framed. And that was art worthy of being, so like, how on earth did that become a piece of art that was valuable enough to put in a museum?
Oh man.
It's really, really interesting.
It is interesting. Maybe I missed the boat.
I mean, what we do and what, pure art that goes for hundreds of thousands of dollars are different animals, I think. I mean, how do you straddle that line? I find like I know I'm a commercial photographer, and the stuff that I go out in the woods and wave a camera around and see what I get is, I consider that expression of.
That's your,
But like working as a creative artist is a different thing, and totally you do that to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I think furniture and photography are similar in that way. They're both very technical. They're very technical skill sets, and within that realm of technicality, you can be very creative.
Right.
So you can make a living being a commercial photographer, and you could also make a living being an artist, right? And furniture is the same way.
Right.
And at a given point, the photography you're shooting is very specific for promotional material for builders or for architects or, and then designing and building a piece of furniture. It can be artfully composed, but its function is a piece of furniture. It's meant to be used as a bench or as a cabinet to store things at the end of the day. So, but within that, there's this world of art. I think that, I think one thing about I'm not a commercial furniture maker, right? I design and build
that's
one
kind of another
piece
thing.
at a time, but it's still my pieces. They serve function first, right? Not even first, because I love the idea of it, of aesthetically a piece harmonizing with its ability to be able to function. I think both should harmonize, but there's no right or wrong. It's just what I believe. I believe a piece of furniture should function. I've seen a lot of really amazing furniture, especially in the past 10 years. And I've seen pieces that don't function, that are insanely beautiful. And it's interesting, like when you see a piece in a magazine versus seeing it in person. Seeing it in a magazine, you can go, that's just trite bullshit. I don't know why that exists. And then you see it in person, and you have a response to it. It's in 3 dimension, and you get to like walk around it and be in a room with it, and it serves a completely different function. And I think that function is important as well. I don't think one is better than the other. It's just for me, right now I love designing and building furniture as furniture.
Right.
But at the same time, like I have this idea to do a series of wall panels. Like I want to get more into creating pieces of art that are like inspired by quilts around the world.
Yeah.
Using my patterns, like using my veneer pieces and creating patterns that I really want them to read like fabric, like my plaid cabinet.
Right.
Like when you look at that cabinet, the veneer, like how it's done, it's like the lines aren't perfectly straight. So it reads, and also with the grain of the wood, how it's oriented.
Right.
It kind of reads like fabric.
Yeah, no,
cool.
I love those pieces. Yeah, and you're responsible for the best desk I've ever seen. The one that Caleb
Thanks, man.
bought.
I'm building a really cool one right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for my dad actually.
Oh nice.
It's a gift for pops. Yeah. It's a very Nakashima inspired desk.
Boy, those kids are
Man,
trying
those kids
to get a hold of
blowing
Daddy
up
today.
your phone. It's like a crazy girlfriend.
So how do you come to what you believe that influences what you do?
I don't know. I think that I think it goes back to childhood. It's all based on nostalgia and like a reverence for something. I think growing up the way that I did, surrounded by antiques that my great grandfather or my great great grandfather and my grandfather and my dad, family members made, and that I got to live with growing up, that did something. And then having my family constantly talk about that, like, oh, this corner hutch, like, oh, your great great grandfather made that with his own hands, and we use it and we love it. Right.
And so this was spoken of in your home.
Totally.
Like it's known, like
my whole
so-and-so made that.
Yes. Your grandfather made this table that like we're eating dinner on. And the idea that like family gathered around this and we ate on it every single night, that and that he made that, to me, it was like they were like superheroes to me. They were like, oh my God, like you made this and we get to, and we use it, and you guys, and we love it. So it was just a special thing to me. And that was with everything, with a lot of furniture in my grandparents' house, a lot of furniture in my house. My dad was, even when my dad was a photographer, his career, my whole life was a photographer, commercial photographer. Right. And, but even through all that, like he was constantly putting, making things and putting things together in our house. And I think just constantly being surrounded by that is what put that bug in
It's
me.
interesting.
I don't know.
Like for me growing up, I can't ever remember, like my dad had a set of pliers and a hammer. That's about it.
Yeah.
I don't,
You can do a lot with pliers and a hammer.
right. Yeah. But I don't ever remember seeing anything in our home that was made by anyone we knew
Yeah.
or by my parents or,
Yeah.
and I look around at my house, and sometimes if I start to think about it, there's pottery, there's art, there's furniture, there's a lot of things.
Yeah. That are made by friends and.
that were made by me.
Oh, cool.
And like you did that mirror for us. You did is credenza the right
cabinet.
word?
Yeah.
Cabinet.
Yeah.
Derek made the table.
Right.
Heather, the art.
The painting.
I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
both you and I have different versions of the same things in our living room as
Yeah.
far as art and chair. But it's just interesting to me that I didn't absorb that like from my
Right.
culture. It's just like I just really enjoyed making things.
Yeah.
And I do find that the people I've gravitated towards being friends with are usually of that ilk to a
Yeah.
degree as well.
Yeah.
So it's
That's cool.
interesting how that is absorbed and transferred and
Right.
yeah.
It is interesting. I have a lot of friends who are not, they're not makers.
Yep.
They're creative in their own way, but they have 9 to 5 jobs, work for companies. And I think that's, to me, it's important for me to have that balance in my life. I also have a lot of friends who are artists and creative people, but I love surrounding myself with people who are nothing like me.
Mm.
And
That's a really, especially ideologically, it's an important thing to surround yourself with us too.
Yeah, it's super important. My best friends are they love what I do and are appreciative of it, and they support it. I've made them things, and but they can't do it. They can't do what I do,
Right.
and they know that, and so we have things to learn from one another, which
Right.
is great. It's valuable.
Yeah.
Well, that has been a very interesting conversation to me.
Yeah.
And I
great.
appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
All
Thanks
the
for
way
having
from
me on. It was
Biddeford
fantastic.
over to Biddeford.
It's a long drive.
Yeah, long drive.
Lots of traffic.
Oh, how good is it not to have to sit in traffic?
How good is it, though, that Biddeford has a little bit of traffic now?
That's good too, I guess.
Right?
Yeah,
Biddeford
right.
has, when I moved here, it had no traffic.
Yeah.
Which at
So
the same time,
you
that was
moved
nice
here
too.
in 2010.
Yeah, Biddeford.
I was here in
rugged.
2003.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just the 7
Oh,
years
you saw-
from there
Yeah.
to when you got here was like huge change.
Huge change.
And in the
yeah.
last 10 years has been just
Massive.
I keep thinking
Great.
I want
It's
to open an art gallery on Main Street somewhere.
Oh, that'd be
and
cool.
Primarily, like I was talking to you about frames
We
and
need
stuff,
that,
just
yeah.
do really large format prints
Yeah.
and other art that is very abstract.
Yeah.
But one's going to go in eventually,
Yeah.
and
I've had this idea to open a retail store.
Yeah.
But I that's another thing too, is like, I think you're the same way. I am constantly coming up with new ideas to do things that, to me, is a mental break from furniture.
Yep.
But ultimately, it always leads me back to
Influences back
it
into what you're
influences
doing.
back into what I'm doing.
Sure.
And so it's important to have those ideas, whether or not they come to fruition.
Yeah.
It's important to have them. But I have this idea to open a store in Biddeford.
Yep.
I think it'd be super fun. Megan's like, "Who's going to staff it?" I'm like, "I don't know.
I
Not
wonder
me."
if there could be some kind of artist collective that
That'd be cool.
does something like
Mhm.
that, but you keep some kind of curated, like you wouldn't want flea market, antique,
right.
modern art. Like if
That's
you
right.
could,
That's
I
right.
mean, maybe you would want that. I personally would want more of a cohesive feel to it. But
Right.
I don't know. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk.
Yeah. Keep talking.
All right. Cool.
All right.
Well,
Thanks, Trent.
Yeah.
Appreciate it,
thanks,
man.
Gabriel
Yeah.
Keith Sutton. Check Gabe out at what are you on Instagram? GKS.
GKS Furnituremaker
Yep.
and GKSFurnitureMaker.com.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
check Gabe out. Thanks for coming in.
Please do. Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah, always good to see you.